This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. The White House has unveiled a record-shattering Pentagon budget request of $1.5 trillion for the next fiscal year. It's by far the largest year-over-year increase in a presidential military spending request since World War II. It includes funding for F-35 stealth fighter jets, new warships, including Virginia-class submarines, and Trump's Golden Dome missile defense shield, which the White House says will cost $185 billion to boost U.S. shipbuilding, raise salaries for troops, and AI development in the military. This is President Trump at a White House event last week ahead of the budget proposal announcement.
It's not possible for us to take care of daycare, Medicaid, Medicare, all these individual things. They can do it on a state basis. You can't do it on a federal. We have to take care of one thing, military protection. We have to guard the country.
Critics have slammed Trump's budget proposal for continuing to funnel taxpayer money to increase U.S. military spending for Israel's wars on Gaza, Iran, and Lebanon. Last month, Senator Bernie Sanders filed 3 joint resolutions of disapproval in an attempt to block the sale of U.S. bombs worth over $660 million to Israel. This is Senator Sanders speaking with MS Now host Chris Hayes.
The bottom line is that to give another 20,000 bombs to a country which committed genocide in Gaza happens to be, among many other things, forget the moral issue, happens to be in violation of American law. You don't sell arms, according to American law, to countries that violate international law and human rights. Clearly, Israel has done that. Israel talked Netanyahu, who for 40 years has wanted a war with Iran, finally got a president to go along with him.
For more, we go to Washington, D.C., where we're joined by 2 people. We start with Josh Paul, veteran State Department official who resigned in 2023 under the Biden administration to protest the push to increase arms sales to Israel for its war on Gaza. He's now a director at A New Policy, the lobbying group he co-founded with fellow resignee Tarek Habash to press for a change in U.S. policy on Palestine and Israel. Josh, thanks for joining us again. The Trump administration first declared an emergency soon after the U.S. and Israel launched joint strikes on Iran to bypass Congress on more than 20,000 bombs to Israel. You resigned over the push to increase arms sales during Israel's war on Gaza. Can you give your perspective on the significance of over 20,000 more bombs potentially being delivered to Israel and overall on this shattering $1.5 trillion military budget?
Yes, thank you, Amy. So let's start with that $1.5 trillion budget, which doesn't include, let's be clear, funding for the current Iran war. That will come in a further supplemental. So it's a vast amount of money and ultimately leveraged against the U.S. debt. We are spending our children's money to take the lives of other people's children. That's what it boils down to. It's just a vast amount of money in a way that is reckless by an administration that is corrupt. When we look at this new weapon sales, these new weapon sales to Israel, 20,000 1,000-pound bombs coming out of, let's be clear as well, U.S. stocks. A lot of these weapons are not going to be built afresh. They're going to be transferred out of the U.S. stocks, and then President Trump will, if he gets it, spend this money from the taxpayer and from our national debt to recuperate or to recoup ourselves for that. It is another burden certainly on the American people, but also on the world. At the end of the day, it is not just these bombs. There are also other weapons we have provided to Israel, including bulldozers that are being used to destroy Palestinian homes in acts of collective punishment. Senator Sanders will be bringing a vote next week to the floor of the Senate against the bombs, against these bulldozers, and I think it is vital that we see as many Democratic senators as possible vote to block those weapons, and ideally Republicans as well, because this is no one's interest whatsoever.
And Josh, you said that the foreign military financing, or FMF, serves almost as a gift card for Israel to spend on weapons. You talk about the disproportion in military aid specifically to Israel that the United States has had historically compared to other countries in the world?
So Israel has always been by far the largest recipient of U.S. military grant assistance. In President Trump's budget request, the provision to Israel of U.S. funding comprises 63% of the global available total. People keep asking, why do we keep getting pulled back into wars in the Middle East? What about this rebalance to Asia? Well, when you're spending the majority of your global funding in Israel and in the region, in the Middle East, of course you're going to keep getting pulled back. We are not getting pulled back to the Middle East. We are anchored to it as a function of our own funding to Israel.
I want to bring... Oh, go ahead, Juan.
I just want to say last month the State Department approved potential arms sales to 3 Middle East countries worth more than $23 billion. Talk about this aid to countries like the UAE, Kuwait, and Jordan.
So this isn't aid, this is sales, but the Trump administration used an emergency authority. These cases were already sitting under congressional review, and Congress had questions, both about the arms sales to Israel and about the arms sales to the UAE. The UAE, of course, being involved right now or supporting the genocide that is occurring in Sudan. The administration, I think, very cynically used the current war with Iran to essentially say, okay, we're declaring an emergency. We're not going to answer any more questions from Congress about these human rights abuses, about these risks, and we are just going to move these forward. So a very cynical, very disturbing use of the existing authorities.
And before we go to Rob Weissman, I wanted to ask you, 4 astronauts are part of the NASA Artemis II crew, became the furthest humans from Earth in all of history, officially, as they began their trajectory, which they just finished around the dark side of the moon. Trump's budget plans to cut 23% of NASA's budget, $3.6 billion cut to the agency's science unit, which could cancel 40 programs. Can you talk about all of these budget cuts across federal agencies and how it's a path for further privatization of the federal government?
Yeah, so first of all, I think we can all think of 4 other people that we would rather be the furthest they could be from the Earth. So what Trump is doing is essentially creating an opportunity for SpaceX in particular and for other major companies that have close relationships with the White House to essentially privatize space, to continue to advance, through the defense budget, President Trump's, as he sees it, national security role, and to militarize space, but then to cut the civilian side of the funding in order to allow profit-seeking companies, the private sector, essentially to build up its role there as well. So it's a lose-lose both for science and for humanity.
So a moral obscenity, that's what Public Citizen and nearly 300 other groups nationwide are calling the budget. They're urging Congress to reject Trump's budget proposal, which could cut billions of dollars in social programs for education, health care, climate, and affordable housing. The White House budget request also continues to aggressively slash federal programs Trump has decried as quote-unquote woke, aimed at diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. For more, we're also going to Robert Weissman, co-president of Public Citizen. His group just releasing a statement titled, "Trump's Budget Proposal is a Moral Obscenity." Rob, thanks again for joining us. Lay out what is not being funded, what is being cut.
Yeah, well, I think we got to look at these two things simultaneously. A $500 billion increase, a 50% increase in the Pentagon budget, and a roughly $100 billion proposed cut for everything else. So the everything else that's going to be cut includes some of the items you were talking about, includes funding for education, includes funding for health care, huge investments in science, biomedical science, all kinds of sciences, including the NASA program you were talking about. And of course, cuts for programs to help the poor and vulnerable, because that's what Trump and Russ vote prioritize. Those cuts are not likely to go through. The Congress is not going to agree to them. However, to some extent, they reflect what Trump is actually doing in refusing to spend money that Congress has appropriated. On the other side is a $500 billion proposed increase for the Pentagon, and Congress is going to take that seriously. So $500 billion, it's beyond the wildest dreams of the military-industrial complex. All it means is buying more weapons for more war. But if you stop and think about what could we do with $500 billion, if we had the political will, which Trump says he has, for war spending, if we had the political will for peace spending, what could we do? Well, we could restore all of the cuts to Medicaid and food assistance in Trump's prior bill. We could expand Medicare to cover dental, health, and vision. We could have universal care for children 0 to 4. We could double the budget for the EPA. We could invest in affordable housing and end homelessness in the United States. We could restore and expand all of the foreign assistance that's been cut, which public health experts say will lead to the deaths of millions by 2030. We could invest all of that and more, not one of those things, all of those things and more with this $500 billion. So it is a moral obscenity both for what it proposes to spend and for what it shows we could do but are refusing to do because we don't have the political will.
And Rob Weissman, in terms of what it proposes to spend, it's an astounding amount of money. What, in addition to the fact that Trump has been pushing the NATO countries to increase their military spending, which will, of course, rebound back to American arms manufacturers, and the need of the Gulf states to increase their military spending because of the war that he embarked on here with Iran. What does President Trump propose to spend this increase on?
Well, the details matter, but I have to say, I don't think they really know. This amount is so large, they're just throwing a giant number out there. We saw in the last tax and budget reconciliation bill $150 billion extra going to the Pentagon, and the Pentagon made a desperate effort to try to spend as much as it could in September because they were running out of time, according to their own timetable, and they were just throwing it everywhere they could. I think two things that are worth teasing out that they're looking to do. One is the president's Golden Dome project, which is a kind of a revitalization of what used to be known as Star Wars, an alleged AI-driven system to provide protection against ballistic missile attacks in the United States, which is impossible to achieve, according to scientists, but which is projected out to spending over many years at trillions of dollars, and then a massive new increase of investment in the nuclear program to invest in more nuclear weapons rather than just decommissioning the ones that we have on hand.
And if you could talk about the White House calling on Congress to approve a significant portion of its proposed military spending increase using the filibuster-proof reconciliation process, which would allow Republicans to approve the budget without any Democratic support, Rob. Explain in lay terms what's going on here.
Yeah, so it can sound tricky, but it's pretty straightforward. They're proposing this preposterous increase of $500 billion. By the way, on top of a $1 trillion budget that should be cut, because it's already vastly more than we need to spend. And this is an agency, the Pentagon, that can't pass an audit, that is the sender of waste and fraud in the federal government. It should easily be cut by $200 billion. But they're proposing a $500 billion increase. That's a lot. Democrats aren't going to agree to that. So their proposal is the majority of that should be funded through this special process that you're referencing, the reconciliation process, that cannot be filibustered and could be driven through just by a majority of Republicans in the Senate, or by a totality of the Republicans in the Senate. So it's a way to get around the normal appropriations process, which requires some bipartisan agreement. It would mean that if they do $350 billion without the filibuster, the rest of the budget is kind of a trick. So if you think you're passing just a $1.1 trillion Pentagon budget, you're actually passing a $1.5 trillion Pentagon budget because they plan to do the rest of it without Democratic agreement. And just to make it even worse, to add on to the point that Josh made, this does not include the additional $200 billion they're going to seek to fund and expand the Iran war. So this is separate from the Iran war funding. If you add that in, the Pentagon budget would be up at $1.7 trillion.
We just have about 20 seconds left. What is Public Citizen calling for now?
Well, absolute no, not another dollar for the war, not an extra dollar for the Pentagon. We want cuts, but right now the priority is to stop this from going through, and we think that is achievable As you juxtapose these numbers, what the tweets you were reading from the cartoon villain president threatening to destroy civilizations, he doesn't need a penny more to engage in the lunatic behavior he's trying to inflict on the rest of the world.
Rob Weissman, I want to thank you for being with us, co-president of Public Citizen. The recent statements headlined, Trump's budget proposal is a moral obscenity. And I want to thank Josh Paul, veteran State Department official who resigned in 2023 under the Biden administration to protest the push to increase arms sales to Israel amidst its assault on Gaza, and now slamming the military budget that's being proposed. Happy birthday, Matthew Ely. That does it for our show. I'll be speaking tonight at the Green Music Center at Sonoma State University in California. That's at 7:30 tonight at Weil Hall. Juan will be speaking on Thursday and Friday here in New York City at the CUNY Grad Center at the Latinx Freedom Conference. Democracy Now! Currently accepting applications for a development associate position. Go to our website at democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez for another edition of Democracy Now! Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.